Hey Peyton, good to see you again on this beautiful day. And this time with a quote by Peter Schieldal, where he says, "Memory is a liar. It's a heap of dog-eared, smudged, incessantly revised fictions." How do you relate to this story, Peyton?
Good to be back with you, my friend. Yes, this is a quirk of having our computers made of meat and wetware rather than ones and zeros and hard drives. And I think it's something that it's easy to forget. And most of us do, in fact, have a very dim and sometimes full lack of awareness over this little quirk of our little human brains and our psychology. And the truth is, with memory, we're kind of playing a game of telephone with ourselves. There's sort of this element by which something happens, we observe, we have this stimulus, it's recorded in some sense somewhere in this system. And then we remember the memory, and then it's sort of the memory of the memory, the remembering of the memory. And then there's a remembering of the remembering of the memory. And then there's a remembering of the remembering of the remembering. And over time, there is this game by which the quote unquote reality of what happened gets distorted a little bit, a little bit, a little bit over time, especially if it has something to do with our identity, our narratives, or if there's some amount subconsciously of motivated reasoning in our system. Do we want to view ourselves as awesome? Do we want to view ourselves as a victim? Do we want to have some narrative that tells some smooth story without nuance about our past and what happened in any form. And to the extent that we do, the memory distortion device will go way even harder. And really, these things that feel like they're objective fact of what happened or what was said or what was done or whatever, they are not to be totally trusted. Like, they're take them with a grain of salt and know that, like, they're distorted to some extent, and you don't know if it's 1% or 90% distorted, but you cannot take them as if you're watching a video of exactly the scene that happened. If you especially if it's further in the past, especially if it has anything to do with narratives that you're attached to or desire in some way. And this can cause all kinds of sometimes challenging interpersonal things when two people remember things different. And sometimes they're totally legitimately, honestly remembering stuff different. How do you
Yeah.
see this play out? And what is it if we recognize this about memory? And this is verifiable. Like, we can actually just read about this and confirm that, oh, yeah, memory, it does in fact work this way. This is well studied. This is not merely opinion. Given that this is true about memory, what should we recalibrate about the ways that we're tempted to operate, or what should we understand when we run into certain situations?
Operating better means not being too attached to one side of the story, in my opinion. Because if memory is a liar and we experience stuff differently from anybody else, then we can also abstract a level higher and say, okay, it seems like everybody is also not only remembering something different, but is also viewing and experiencing the world in his or her own way. And that means everybody lives in sometimes completely different, sometimes a little bit different worlds. And if we acknowledge this as an abstraction or like as a mental model where everybody lives in a different world, we can have much more compassion if people see things in a different light, if people have different opinions to our own. So you can see it as like there's a canvas and everybody projects his or her own story onto the canvas. Yeah, there's base reality, but how things get experienced is very subjectively. And if everybody lives in a different world and we can have more empathy towards their version of the story, we can also detach from trying to convince them from another story. Like, it is not so important that other people realize our way of seeing the world. And that gives us more power to do our thing with less resistance. So this is one side of it. And if memory is a liar and we remember things differently and we are detached from different versions. And then we can also say, okay, where is the challenge here? Is it in remembering our past in a more beneficial way so that it helps us live better today? Or is it,
Yeah, what mindsets empower us? What is our relationship with our memory that serves us? This, I think, comes to mind as there's a new opportunity for agency and recommend it in recognizing that this is not a written in stone on the day. We're not watching a purely high integrity video of every single conversation that we've ever had. It actually opens up, I think, an opportunity to have a healthy and high agency working relationship with our past. If we can take it with a grain of salt, we can have this mindset of, okay, I'm going to view this thing in the past not as I'm a victim of this thing, but as this thing was here to grow me. And not as I was the perfect hero and I never messed anything up, or I'm epic and everybody else sucks and everything that went bad was somebody else's fault and everything that was good is because I'm so great. These things actually cause us to be fragile and weaken us. And we should beware too of the ways that we're tempted to deceive ourselves. Self-deception is rife in memories.
yeah.
Self-deception is rife. One thing I can share that's a takeaway of this that I've learned the hard way is if you agree to something that's important, and it's important that you remember that both sides have an accurate recognition of what was agreed to, you do have to write it down. Even though it
Hmm.
feels like, oh, this feels formal, this feels silly, it feels like it kills the vibe to write this down. If it's important that we remember this the same way, then you've got to write it down because the bigger the thing that's involved, the bigger thing that you want to remember the same way. If you both remember it differently, which you would be surprised that that's very possible, even for things that seem completely black and white at the time. In 3 years, you guys could have totally different recollections of this very foundational, important agreement. Only the writing will save you in coming back to what you actually did, because both of your memories are dirty liars. And if two people remember something totally differently, that can be the cause of intense stress. Like you could, that's how two people who started off well-meaning can end up having this doubting each other's intentions, can end up having this some really difficult bridges to reconnect in the end, especially if it's high stakes, especially honestly if money is involved is when stuff has to be in writing. So like yesterday, for example, I was hiring a guy for a role and I was like, okay, should we clarify that this is a part of the role that the hours are going to be from about this to this? And I was like, oh, it's kind of formal and this and that. And a mentee of mine or a leader at my company who is really wise beyond his years said something like, yeah, there tends to be much more to gain than to lose from clarifying our intentions with somebody up front and making sure that they're on the same page about what we intend. And then in clarifying that intention, it was natural to then put the intention in writing in the offer letter. And even that will be something that is helpful in terms of pointing back to if things drift or whatever, we can point to this and say, hey, this was what we offered. This is our agreement. And having it in writing is so much more powerful than a verbal agreement that we both will remember differently in a month. How do you think about,
Hmm.
practically speaking, given that the memory works like this, we should know it about ourselves. We should also expect it and price it in others and not take it too personally when people remember things differently than us. What other practical elements of this are helpful for us to keep in mind?
Well, as you said, it is probably a wise investment to spend time lavishly on getting in sync, and synchronize one's understanding in the here and now before you take the next step. Because it's not only that we remember things differently and that we experience things differently, we are also modeling things differently when we talk about them. Because we are all unique brains, we all have our wirings and also different models of the world and different mental models. And therefore, it is important as you speak about something which you want to build upon as a foundation. Maybe it's a contractual working agreement, or you hire something and you give them contract. You really want to make sure that both parties align and are in sync on the terms, on the conditions. And on the how to deal with each other. Because if you spiral it out, it will have much less error costs to rectify things that you meant differently and the other party understood differently. So this is what it is about, because the cost of errors do not grow linearly during the project life cycle. They grow exponentially. And you can see it this way. If you paint a sketch, then correcting something only requires a rubber and another line to draw. It's very cheap. But if you build a machine to produce the sketch already, then it requires to rectify the sketch and the machine parts. And you have to invest time in advising the workers on how to change. But if you find the error and the machine already produced stuff and is at hundreds of places at your customer sites, then it requires as well the maintenance crew to be dispatched and rectify the error, not only the machine, but also the devices already deployed, also the trust that your customers placed in you. So that's why it is most important to get in sync at the earliest time possible. Yeah. And therefore, the other question is, how do we not only change the narratives or sync our narratives about the past, about the memories, but also for ourselves remain a coherent identity with our narrative about ourselves. So this is another challenge. Maybe there's some tools or some best practices that you found, Peyton, in your life.
For me, it is writing. I think that the swimming swarm of memories in the brain incoherently firing from all of these directions. You see this scene play out again. You hear this story. You have the map of your experience or you have the territory of your experience translated into the map of your narrative about it. You have this extremely lossy compression layer where a whole memory gets converted just into a few sentences of your story about it. And based off of these narratives, you spin up a projection of the scene as it played out, perhaps. You might have a memory working in different ways. It might be further along in the past and you've remembered it 10 times and you're 10 layers back in this telephone game with yourself in your own mind. I think that for me, journaling is extremely helpful. In some way, writing is thinking. Writing forces us to take this unquestioned mess in our brain of loose ends and incomplete sentences and a fragment here that spins into a fragment here, and there's almost this kind of like in a dream, you have this scene change and you don't even question how the scene has changed. You're in this place and this next thing you're doing is a non sequitur that makes no sense, but you actually don't question it in the dream. You don't question the logic of your dream a lot of times, even if it's just totally preposterous when you wake up and realize, how did I get from there to there to there? And I was doing this and I ended up doing this. Our memories
Mm.
and our thoughts, when they're just swimming around in our head, are kind of like that. And when we don't journal, a lot of times, what's worse is that we almost feel a subconscious pressure to hold on to and keep track of and quote unquote process what has happened. And if we don't actually sit and write it down, we're never forced to crystallize and clarify what is going on in our heads. Whereas journaling enables us to get the swimming swarm onto a paper. It forces us to put one word in front of another and in some way process it to clarity or a relative clarity, not a total clarity, but at least it's extremely helpful in helping us make sense of our journey in our life along the way. Not as an ultimate ends necessarily, but as a very helpful means where we can really process as we go and we can integrate our learnings, we can admit our faults and our mistakes and where we missed the mark and clarify our intentions for how we want to do something better in the future, or even put our wins in perspective. Is like, yes, I did really well at this and I honor that and I bless that in myself, but I know that this is an area that I missed the mark and I can do better. And I know that the next time this comes around, this good momentum is not guaranteed and I would like to do this in the future. And it helps us to have some metacognition about what is going on rather than being completely consumed in the torrent as we are narrating and projecting on the torrent. I also think that the thing that I need to be reminded of in my journey, because I'm very thinky by nature. I have this verbally dominant mind, and it's tempting for me to live in my narratives about things to a point of imbalance. I think that for me, a part of a healthy relationship with memory, with identity, with our stories about the past and what has gone on, to hold them with an open palm, is to actually wake up from the past. I think if we are too much dwelling in the past, it does not serve our present. It does not serve our future. There is a golden mean to where we do want to learn, we want to grow, we want to recognize the areas that we learned lessons or fell short or did well and want to continue to double down and recognize that and bless that about ourselves and enjoy experience satisfaction and happiness. All of these are good when they're in moderation and the right balance and when they're held with the right perspective within the greater context of our whole being. In the greater context that my narrative, my identity, who I think I am, my stories about my past, my memories, that's not who I ultimately am. That's not all of who I am. That arises within who I am. The memories in the present are arising within the now. When we have a memory, it's sort of like a daydream that's arising over our senses in the now. Memories only arrive in the now. In some sense, the past is never real in our direct experience because our only encounter of the past arises in the now. We never actually go to the past. We just replay certain fragments of it, sort of like playing a recording or playing a video now. It only arises in the wholeness of the unfolding one and recognizing the one, recognizing the now, recognizing the unfolding, and seeing that as, oh, this is where the memory is arising. I'm not actually back there. I'm not actually living in that part of the timeline. And there is no line in the direct experience. That's a part of the map that arises now. Right now, I am in the unfolding wholeness and seeing things in the context of the unfolding wholeness. That memory only arises as these appearances that come and go and play and subside, and the painful ones come and then they go, but they always arise here now. And here now is where we have our agency. Here now is where we can determine our relationship, our wise step forward, what we have learned and what we carry forward. We can clarify and move with our intentions. We can flow and unstick ourselves when we get stuck in the past. All of that agency arises when we can see the memories in the context of the one unfolding wholeness, when we can shift from linear time to unfolding time. That I think is where we can get our greatest agency and power with memories by putting it and seeing that this arises within this whole arising context, this one consciousness, that it's all appearances within the light. I think that's the healthiest relationship with our memory that we can have, and the one where it can really play to, we can work with it in a very healthy and productive and fruitful way. How do you think about this past arising within the present or relationship with living in the past or the future and the right balance with all of that?
Well, I see it similarly to you. It is about experiencing our thoughts only in the now, and all the past memories which come up is only a dream. All the future projections is only a dream. And if we only live in our head, it's not really different from our dream state of being in when we are asleep at night. There is only this moment right here, right now. And it's probably relative. It's probably different for different people, depending on how fast they move. There's this famous physics experiment with the two twins. One is near light speed going around the sun, coming back, and the other one remains on the earth. And both experience time in the now, but they age differently because time is also relative. But it's a side note. It's some curious way the universe works. Doesn't even have to be that far into the physics, into the realm of physics, but into the realm of spirituality or practice, as people living 5,000 years from now also experience it similarly, is that life only happens in the now. And yes, we can now have memory, we can tell stories, we have the tool of language, we can relate places and times in the past to our friends and family so that they can also be warned about the lion which I saw yesterday night at the river, so that they don't get eaten by the lion. That's a whole different scheme and a whole different ability of our human brain. But that also comes with the toil of us living in a dream if we live in our daydreams, which is not always too bad, but is also not the mode of being where I want to be all day long. I want to be experiencing the here and now as it unfolds and do my best work in flow, even if I don't experience time anymore. But that needs the realization that you do not have to be attached to a story or an outcome of the past or a projection in the future to do your best work now. And this is a powerful reminder that we can wake up from our dreams every moment in time. And time is not something which just like presents itself in past, present, and future, but it's unfolding here and now. Peyton, any closing comments or ideas to
Yeah,
share?
there's a few things that you said that I just want to highlight from this conversation. I think what you just shared about if we're dwelling in the past, we will not be able to connect to our greatest power now. If we have a closed fist around this identity, or if we're spending too much time watching film of ourselves in the past, even if we're watching our highlight reel, that will cut off flow. If we are living in the past, then we will be divided from the now, which will cut off flow. Flow comes in the now. And so the past is totally it's a useful reference in a lot of times. And we need to learn, and we want to learn, and we want to grow, and we want to clarify some of these things so that we can use them profitably. But we do not want to live in the past. The past is it can be a terrible prison sometimes, and we alone can free ourselves when we find ourselves in that prison. It can also be this hall of mirrors by which we become too enamored to some fragile image of ourselves that then shatters in the now. If I'm watching my highlight reel all day in my own head, and then I go do something, all my life is not a highlight reel. Like, I'm gonna look like an idiot sometimes on a daily basis, and I'm gonna make mistakes, and I'm gonna do good things too, but I'm not gonna be an all highlight reel epic movie scene, handles everything perfect and looks cool guy all the time. I just am not. And so if I'm attached to some image of myself, I make myself fragile, and you cut yourself off from the flow. If I'm sitting over here watching myself do stuff from the third person and trying to like monitor some self-image of how I'm showing up, I cut off flow, and then I don't show up that well. And even like looking back at my moments of flow, if I spend too much time doing that, I cut off the flow. And so our relationship with the past should always be with an open palm. We shouldn't believe everything. We should take it all with a grain of salt, first of all. And we should live now. We should live in the now. And the past is a resource, a tool, a guide, even that arises within a context of reality, of unfolding reality. The other things that you mentioned that I just wanted to highlight is the natural consequence of communication is misunderstanding, and this radical idea that we cannot manage other people's memories, nor do we ultimately need to, at least nearly as much as we need to. It's very helpful to clarify where we are at, but we don't have to try to force somebody into remembering what we remember if you remember things differently. And so this phrase of very simply, we remember things differently, is so helpful in some of our most hard disagreements where I know for a fact that we said this 3 years ago or whatever. And you seem to be totally convinced otherwise. Maybe
Mhm.
this person is being honest and I'm being honest, even though there is only one thing that actually happened that neither of us have complete perfect access to. And we remember things differently is so much more helpful and can help people move forward rather than we are both insisting that we wrestle each other's memories to the ground, and I'm not going to end this conversation until you remember things my way. It doesn't work. I've tried it, and it just doesn't help. That we remember things differently can cut through that, and it can help us to just that remembering things differently can be a reality, and we don't have to get so much into who like the moralizing about it and judgment about it and whatever. Just move forward and give up the war of trying to change other people's memories. 99% of the time it is beautiful. It's helpful to clarify our own. It's helpful to share that like this is what I remember. That's good. It can help them understand where you're coming from. It's good communication. but allow it to be what it is. Allow the memories to agree to disagree sometimes. This can be important to remember in some of our most tempting moments. But yeah, I'm inspired to take my memories less seriously, to let them be soft, to soften what is too rigid within me, to not get attached to any self-image of myself, to not get attached to any narrative about the past, to allow the past to be as it is, and to accept the past as a whole. Accept it, accept it, accept it, because I can't change it, and disagreeing with the past never works. And so just surrender to the past, let the past be, and have an attitude of embracing the hardest, the worst shit when I felt like I was lied to or betrayed, when I felt like I made a mistake that I regretted that sent me through hell, when I felt like this thing went wrong and it should have gone different. All of these things allow myself to just accept the past. I'm never going to win a disagreement. Just allow it to be there, allow it to flow, use it and recognize it in the present. Let my thoughts be clear and see that I'm not there. See that I'm not in the past. The past is just an arising in the now, and see everything in the context of unfolding reality here. The past, the future, we don't touch them. You can't smell the past right now. You can't see the past right now. You can only see an arising within your mind, a mental image arising now. All we experience is now. We are always in the now. This is the recognition that I hope to carry forward in the week to come. What about you, my friend? What are your intentions?
Yeah. My intentions for this week is to not only accept the past, but also try to get a grasp on my narrative about myself right here, right now. To also get in coherence with what I'm experiencing and think about it and then let it go again. But journaling a little bit more. This is my intention.
Mm,
Well, you framed it very beautifully, Peyton. May you be well and happy in the now during this week, man.
yes.
See you soon.
You as well, my friend. I appreciate it. Talk to you on the next one.